back covering today's historic public impeachment hearing. Lawmakers drilling into the testimony and the statements that have been surfacing as new evidence.
The president conditioning security assistance on an investigation into his political opponent prior to this administration, is this something we would do all the time?
No, sir.
You described in your text message exchanges that engaging in a scheme like this is, quote, crazy. Can we also agree that it's just wrong?
Yes.
We are back with Justice Department veteran Andrew Weissmann and joined by someone with extensive experience as a journalist looking at the office of the presidency and these scandals. President of News and Guts, Dan Rather. He, of course, covered Watergate and the Clinton impeachment for CBS News, part of a storied career. Thanks for being on the beat on this big night.
Thanks for having me, Harry.
What jumped out to you about today's hearing and any parallels or contrasts with so many of the other White Houses you've covered?
Well, what jumped out to me today is the effort by the Republicans to sort of say, listen, everybody knows all this. They seek to have people become numb to what we already know. That's what jumped out to me today, because we already know that the evidence we're talking about now, the solicitation of a foreign power to get involved in our election, the evidence is strong. The president's behavior and what he said has been outrageous. The complicity of the Republicans is depressing, and it's a serious moment for the country. We know that. What the Republicans sought to do today, and others will have to judge whether they were successful or not, is kind of convince people, you know what, this is really no big deal, and if you're saying to yourself you already know all this, yeah, that's the case, so we need room. That's what jumped out. In terms of comparison with the Watergate period and the Clinton impeachment, this is completely different for a long list of reasons, which we will not go down the whole list. But first and foremost, this is the first time in which we've had an impeachment proceeding in which it involved questions of a foreign power involved in the elections or sought to be involved in elections, and very serious military national security issues. That didn't exist with the Clinton impeachment. It didn't exist with the impeachment effort against Richard Nixon. He resigned rather than face impeachment.
Indeed, to your point, the Watergate tapes showed Richard Nixon saying maybe we could get the CIA to back off the FBI, and it didn't get very far. Here, what your point is, these witnesses are saying under oath, $400 million of military funding was already used to extract this foreign meddling.
Exactly, and that's why I think the frame of reference, I hope, will be the frame of reference for people. That naturally, this is political in many important ways. Punditry comes into play. Do they have enough votes to get impeachment in the House? Would they have enough votes to convict in the Senate? How about the effect on the 2020 election? But in a broader and much more important way, this is fundamentally about our history as a country and the destiny of the country, because history is watching and listening and is going to be a very tough chronicler of these events and the people involved in the events of today.
I'm watching you, and you're flanked by a prosecutor who's listening intently, and there is something the two of you have in common. You both do a mean cross-exam. Both part of your jobs. And we saw the Republicans do that as well. And so I'm very curious what you both think of a good cross-examination, which can be punchy and can be argumentative and is distinct and separate from how good your case is, because your case is your case. Here was Congressman Jordan doing his cross for both of your analysis. Let's take a look.
Ambassador, you weren't on the call, were you? The president, you didn't listen on President Trump's call and President Zelensky's call?
I did not.
You've never talked with Chief of Staff Mulvaney?
I never did.
You never met the president?
That's correct.
You had 3 meetings again with Zelensky and it didn't come up. This is what I can't believe. And you're their star witness. You're their first witness.
Mr.
You're
Jordan,
the guy. You're the guy based on this, based on, I mean, I've seen church prayer chains that are easier to understand than this.
Well, keeping in mind that he's actually doing this for an audience of one, my opinion is he was doing this cross-examination to impress the president.
Did he make any valid points?
I don't think so.
I think that, like a lot of good defense lawyers, you do what you can with if you don't really have great facts. That sounds good, and it is really not a great argument when you have blocked the people with firsthand information from coming in and testifying, and you've blocked documents from coming in to say, gee, you only have secondhand information. And it also leaves aside that the president is actually on a call. And that is firsthand information that is known as an admission. And there's still the bombshell from today, the sort of, for people who followed all the details, you have the president on the day after that call, on the 26th. Presumably, we're going to hear about how the president himself was thinking about what he had demanded on the 25th.
You're referring to something we mentioned earlier in the show, which is the new evidence, new today, under oath. Taylor saying there was this person who heard the president on the call with Sondland. That person, currently unnamed, is testifying in private on Friday. And that means what? That means the plot was being further executed the day after.
It also means that you're going to hear what it is that the president was thinking about. In other words, if he was just thinking this was just a favor, but I didn't really mean it, presumably you're going to hear that. The reports are that the president today has said that he does not recall that conversation. That is going to make it pretty important because you're going to have Sondland presumably testifying about it. You're going to have the staffer testifying about it, and you have the president on record saying, I don't recall it. So how's he going to deny it if the evidence comes out that is actually damning?
The other difference, which is pursuant to that, is you covered presidents who really denied the heart of things to the bitter end. They certainly didn't, before the investigation got going, say, yeah, I did that. And not only did I ask for Ukraine's help, China should get involved and others. I mean, it boggles the mind. I want to get your views on that and to let you reflect for a moment and let us all take just 20 seconds and think about what you've seen. We did dig up some historic reporting you did at the precipice of the Nixon resignation. Let's take a look. It's coming right up.
According to his staff, unless the president has a sudden change of head and heart, his announcement will be resignation. He reached a tentative decision to do so Monday. Under this plan, he would leave Washington as President of the United States. He would arrive in California as a former president.
A long time ago. Different country, different time. There are some parallels with what's happening today. But there's a temptation, I think, to draw too many similarities with Watergate. I come back to something mentioned right near the top, and the big difference is Watergate didn't have in it, the Clinton impeachment didn't have in it, the Andrew Johnson one back in the 19th century didn't have it. This business of a foreign power being involved in the election and the military and national security questions involved in this present situation separated out. Also, something you said earlier in the program, he was talking about what I see as the building blocks. Early in the program, you said, each succeeding day, hopefully, what the House leadership will have are building blocks to put in place. And he just outlined a long line of building blocks when these other witnesses come up and they can verify things that have been suggested or testified to before. Yeah. And I think it's important to know when Watergate first started, the first day of the Watergate hearings on television, frankly, it wasn't that big a deal for that many Americans. It built over time. Right. And so it will be this. Although I do think, this is my opinion, that the Democrats would like very much to get the impeachment in the House done before Christmas.
Right. But as you say, any snapshot of a single day is different than what it builds. And those are, as I was discussing, bricks of evidence. Mr. Weissman used to prosecute people for bricks, but they were a different type of brick.
That is true.
Weren't they?
But I think your point, though, about the president's behavior in not admitting any wrongdoing and saying, OK, I'm not going to ask China for this, is relevant to the Democrats in terms of a critical thing they're going to have to answer to the American people is why should there be a vote of conviction on an impeachment now? Why not just leave it to a year from now? And one of the answers could be if you have a president who is not in any way chastened, who is actually saying, I'm going to continue doing this, and especially when the crime itself, according to the Democratic theory, is interfering with the election. That all seems to be the kind
And
of
this-
case you want to build.
This is why we're in the heart of the Constitution, because crime and punishment is always about both the punitive and the deterrent. And the deterrent is not just against the president, although it may deter, it's also against the entire federal government. So the next phone call about another foreign meddling plot or the next military operation, as you mentioned, may make even more people, even senior people, even the chief of staff, who clearly has been thinking about his legal liability, think a little differently. Andrew Weissman and Dan Rather, so interesting to learn from you both tonight. Dan Rather's latest book is What Unites Us, Reflections on Patriotism. Quite a book for this season. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.